Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to disaster recovery, business continuity, resilience, COVID, crisis management, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Alex Fullick there, so I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get, and we'll see about getting you on the show to come on and talk about something. Quick reminder, fingers crossed, I will be speaking at the Continuity Insights Conference in Louisville, Kentucky, April 25th to 27th. I'm really hoping that this will still be an in-person event and that I'll be able to travel because my conference shadow is back this week. And speaking of this week, it's another episode of This Week in Business Continuity with James Green. James, welcome back.
Thank you, Alex. Happy New Year. Good to be here for another round, a nice quiet. I'm anticipating a nice quiet 2022, and we won't have much to talk about. It'll be very serene, and all our episodes will be 2 or 3 minutes at the moment.
Now splash some water on your face for reality. Yeah, I wish it was going to be that way too. That's sure, but it's not. Not starting out that way anyway. So we've got a few topics to touch on today, and as always, James sends me some PDFs or links ahead of time, and we're going to touch on a few things. James, why don't we start with the first one? I guess I'll just whittle it down to mandates, and then
yes, absolutely. So I want to spend some time talking about a mandate in the United States that OSHA put forth. OSHA regulates all workplace environments of any type in the United States, and they have put forth an emergency temporary standard regarding COVID. So this is going to be a little different. We're not going to talk about transmission or Omicron or the other variant. Regina covers all those masterfully with you. But I've been thinking about this and working on this with some clients from some practical standards that I want to share and get your take on. So this standard is really the Biden administration's attempt to force vaccine mandates. And the way they've done this is OSHA says the standard applies to all organizations of more than 100 employees. So pretty low threshold. Remote employees are excluded, but on-site or hybrid are in play. And this standard actually went into effect January 10th. Companies were required to have just a written policy. And for on-site or hybrid employees, they have to be vaccinated or a mask. Now, where this gets interesting is effective February 9th, companies are required to enforce this policy. So all unvaccinated employees have to show proof of a negative test once a week, or they cannot return to work. Now, there were arguments in front of the U.S. Supreme Court last week regarding this, the legality. I spent all 4 hours listening to it because I need more things to do in my life. And they may issue a stay or opinion, or something may happen Thursday. But what I got thinking about, Alex, is companies I'm working with who are trying to comply with this mandate. Here's the thing they're struggling with. I have in my hot little hands a rapid test. These are very hard to get. And I found out 2 weeks ago, one of my sons said, "Hey, Dad, I have a sore throat." And then he had a runny nose, and then he had a fever, and on and on. My son does not have COVID, just had a cold, which is great. But I tried to first, I was like, okay, let's do a rapid test. I know they're 30% false negative, but we'll start with something. Spent all afternoon going from place to place to place, trying to find these guys. So I got to thinking and working with a client of mine who's trying to comply with this, and they have several hundred employees. How are you going to find tests weekly. So I wanted to talk to you about this from a risk manager standpoint, not from a pandemic standpoint, but just logistically. If you're in the United States or you're in another jurisdiction that's mandating negative tests and tests aren't available, I feel like this is going to fall on us as risk, and it's going to fall on HR, and it's going to be our problem. And management is going to say, well, we wrote the policy, now you enforce it.
Mhm.
What are some thoughts? What are you thinking initially with the, like, I feel like I should put these things on eBay. I have 2 of them. I'm close. They're very hard to find. And especially where I live, everyone knows I live in Florida, which has our governor has a very unique stance about COVID, and the federal government and statewide testing centers have been closed since May. So you want support from the state government here, you're in the wrong jurisdiction.
We're having some of the same challenges up this way, north of the border as well. I'll just use the city where I live. They announced that some of these rapid tests would be available at a couple of different locations in the city. And there were huge lineups all through the night.
Yeah.
And they were gone in an hour. And what it turned out is I think you were allowed two each for a household, assuming there were 2 people there at least. Most people still can't get one. I can't. I've tried, and I checked websites and where they're going to be available. But before you even leave the house, they're gone.
Yeah.
I'm just not in a position to stand out in minus, as it is today, minus 20 degrees weather, trying to get one of these. It's not going to happen. And they are arguing that if people can't get those, then how can you mandate us to actually have them, and take these tests? Those two initiatives just aren't in alignment. You're telling us to do one thing, but you're not giving us them. You're not making them available readily. You're choosing, I don't know, a mall or a supermarket, or, in one's case, a liquor store, to try and attract different people. But that didn't help either, because that meant a lot of people, one, that didn't drink, and the entire Muslim community was not happy about that. And the liquor store was the farthest one in the city, on the edge of the city. So anyone who had to go there that lived on the other side of the city, all these people had to travel. It's just, they're not putting them in readily available centers, and they're moving the availability around, thinking that they're covering all the areas, but they're not, because they just keep disappearing, and then nobody knows where they're going to show up next or when they're going to show up next. And so that's causing unions and management in different companies, just in the city alone, getting really, I'll tone it down, angry. There's a much stronger word that I've heard used, because they can't step in to help either. You're telling us to comply with these mandates that you're telling us, and in some respects, these organizations have their own mandates in place, saying that all of our employees need to be vaccinated or whatever. If you're dealing with customers, if you're working at home, that's your choice. But if you're dealing with customers, thou must be vaccinated, because, well, like a grocery store, you've got people of all ages, all persuasions, you don't know who's got diabetes or who has some sort of other condition that you may come in contact with, and you may harm them by not being vaccinated. So right now, this whole vaccine mandate thing, I understand the point behind it. Get everyone vaccinated, then we can fight this whole thing. But all the logistics behind it, I don't think have been figured out properly.
No.
I think what our health and government representatives are doing are not talking at the same time or speaking the same language. And when they are talking to each other, the very next day, both are saying something different. And because government wants to protect jobs and businesses. Health agencies want to protect people and their workers. The priorities seem to be different. So they'll throw a mandate out, everybody get vaccinated, and yet everyone's going in different directions. So it's no wonder a lot of people like myself can't get tests. People that do get tests are saying, well, how often do I have to take it? Twice a week. Well, then I'm back in the same boat that I was before, trying to find these tests again. And it took me, 6 weeks to find them the last time. So now what? I got 2 tests over a period of, however many weeks it is. Whoopie-doo. That's not going to do anything. So it's really causing a lot of confusion, frustration, and I'm starting to feel it and see it and hear it from people I know is anger. With some of these mandates that are happening, even though there's still a large percentage of people that believe mandates are a good thing, they're getting angry and frustrated with the mandates because, as I said before, all the logistics and the communications that go with it aren't in alignment.
Exactly. For the record, I am pro-vaccine, I am pro-testing, but to your point, logistically, the reason most governments didn't mandate masks in March of 2020, all that time ago, I remember the CDC saying, in meetings with emergency managers, we're not going to mandate masks in March of 2020, even though the science is there, because there's no masks available. And they said, we don't want to add undue burden or panic. Imagine when you bought your first mask. Right now, we all have thousands of them. But when you first tried to get that first one, or you weren't quite sure what to do, the US government and other governments recognize if you mandate something that's not available, all you do is scare and frustrate people. And so now mandating these tests logistically, we're going to be in the same situation come in the US February 9th, unless the Supreme Court changes or, stays this mandate. And the other problem I have is I think this is really skewed economically. And we see this a lot of times in disasters. People with money can evacuate Florida for a hurricane and leave for 2 weeks. And people without money cannot. I think this is falling along the same lines. Most white collar workers are already working from home. They don't have to worry about this. Doesn't matter if they're vaccinated, not vaccinated. They don't have to show proof of anything because they're not in the office. If you look at who's in the office these days, you have what we've talked about a lot are essential workers, which are first responders, healthcare workers, and now the service industry is considered essential. And you have jobs that have to be in the office. Those jobs, a lot of them are, not at the highest 1% of income. And so now you're asking people to take time off of work, to take time away from their day, to your point, hunt these tests down. I was able to just drive around for half the day. And it was kind of funny, by the time I finally found these, my son's PCR test results, the 72-hour test results, had come back negative. So it took me that long. And we had the luxury during that time. My family just stayed at home. I work remote. My wife worked remote. It wasn't school. So we could just self-impose quarantine for 3 days. That's not economically or logistically feasible for most families. And I think what's going to happen, we have a lot of risk managers who listen to your podcast and watch your show who are based in the US, who have more than 100 employees. And their companies have to start enforcing this in less than 4 weeks. So your options are supposed to be, you do not let people return to work. And again, if you don't have a lot of PTO, don't have a lot of vacation time, I think it's going to hurt a lot of people economically. I get the design is to push people to get vaccinated. And again, I am pro-vaccine. I think this methodology through OSHA and putting the burden on businesses is going to be messy. And like you said earlier, people are already mad. And they're already angry, a lot of people, and it's going to get worse when they're trying to find these tests. Because to your point, I know people, people who are immunocompromised or cannot get the vaccine. There is no exemption at all for this OSHA mandate. You're either vaccinated or you're not. There's no exemption for anything. And now people are going to be scrambling. I feel like it's going to be like the toilet paper shortage 2 years ago, but with much higher consequences, because now you're dealing with people's livelihood. And I would love to hear from people who watch the show, if they're under this policy, what they're planning to do logistically. If you're a large healthcare provider, I know one hospital chain, they're going to partner with one of these companies and just provide them these tests free of charge. But if you have 150 employees and you're in financial services, you don't have a secret manufacturing partner that can whip these up for you.
That's right.
Interesting in the next couple of weeks, unless the Supreme Court stays the mandate. And even if they do, I expect the government to come back with another narrower mandate that will pass, judicial review.
Well, the other thing too, and I agree, pushing this down onto businesses and business leaders, it's going to be difficult for them to even implement that, because if they have, let's say there's I'll use yourself and myself as an example. We're both subject matter experts in our field working for this organization, whether it be data entry or whatever the case may be. And I'm vaccinated and you're not, let's say. But the organization needs both of us to keep going. This February 9th date, or whatever date ends up happening here in Canada, if there's a date on the horizon, which there probably is, then what's an organizational leadership team going to do? Well, we have to let James go, but we can't let James go.
Yeah.
Because we need him. We can't operate without him, regardless of what this mandate says. Can he work from home? No, the nature of what he does, he has to be on site. Because the equipment that he uses, or whatever the case may be, is on site. He has to be on site. So does Alex. But we have to get rid of the one who's not, vaccinated according to, the law now. So I don't think that's fair for organizations who are going to find themselves in that position. And there are going to be those types of situations, even if it's just one person. If it's just me and I'm unvaccinated, well, they can't let me go because an entire process falls apart. Now, of course, that can continue on with, we didn't do proper cross training and things like that, and contingency plan and things like that. But in general, that's going to happen in places.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to leadership.
No, not until these tests are widely available. If you have a mask mandate right now with your organization, you can buy masks at the grocery store, a drugstore, a liquor store, a gas station. They're everywhere. And so I respect and understand that, but logistically, these are not everywhere. And it's, I really, for our HR and risk colleagues in the US or any jurisdiction that has this, until these are widely available, it's going to be a problem. And I honestly think a lot of the smaller organizations, when I say smaller, like 100 to 200, are going to maybe ignore this. The large companies who are already on the radar, Amazon, Google, they better comply, because they will be audited the next day. They will. But if you own 3 restaurants and you have 150 people, are you either going to close or are you going to ignore this? It'll be really interesting to see what those organizations less likely to be audited by OSHA, by the federal government, are going to decide to do, until these become, they're every 2 for $5 at the gas station. You can get it with your meal at McDonald's, and they're everywhere like they are with masks right now.
Yeah. You mentioned restaurants. They're already having difficulty with trying to get people to work for them. And up here, we're in a situation now where they're at half capacity again, or closed because of it. Now you're saying that the few staff you can get, if they're not vaccinated, you have to get rid of.
Yeah.
Restaurant owners are eventually going to turn around and say, you know what, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. We're all closed. And now 150 people, as you mentioned, 3 restaurants, 50 people each, where I'm just closing and leaving. Now we've got 150 people out of work. So, there are other things, repercussions that can happen because of this. And for the record, I am pro-vaccine as well. Just in case anyone's wondering there. So we've come to the end of our first segment. We're talking this week in business continuity with James Green, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we are talking with James Green, this week in business continuity. James, great first segment. Lots of good comments there. Let's move on to something new that I think just came out yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. The DRI, just released their annual predictions report for 2022.
That's right. Hot off the press, the DRI's Future Vision Committee. This is their 7th annual prediction report. And one thing I love about this report, Alex, everyone in December or January of every year talks about, here's what's going to happen this year. And there's no accountability of it. And I encourage everyone to read the DRI's report, because the first thing they do is, here's our 10 predictions from last year. And did we get this right or wrong? And I think it's really interesting to, see what they talked about. So I thought we'd do something a little different here. I want to go through some of these predictions, and I thought you and I could agree with this prediction or disagree with this prediction, if that sounds
Sure.
good. I think some of these we're going to go through pretty quickly, as you and I talked about off camera. We're both going to say yes to
to quite a few of them, yeah.
and we won't talk about those. We won't take off time, but some of them I think might be interesting. So prediction 1, climate change will increase polarization between generations, industries, and geographical regions. Do you agree or disagree?
Agree. It will. I'm seeing on the news a lot of people that push climate change doesn't exist, as some people say. And you'll find that it's always some industry leader or somebody who's benefiting from an industry, or their voter base is industry focused. And I'm not knocking on anybody, so don't send any emails. But I see that, and then I know even my young nieces, 10, 11, 12 years old, seem to know a heck of a lot about climate change and are all for doing things to save the planet. And, so I think the division, especially with age groups and different industries, is going to widen. And you've got places in like Texas, I think it was Texas, who said, the wind turbines cause cancer. And then I've been to these countries, but I've also flown over them. Norway, Denmark, places in England, huge wind farms. Well, they're not having an uptick in cancer due to wind farms. Is the wind different in Texas for some reason? So I think the gap is going to get wider.
Exactly. I'm inclined to agree, but disagree for 2022. I think the first half of 22 and maybe the whole year, again, we are going to be still focused on COVID, which is going to kick this issue, unfortunately, to the back burner. So as a long-term prediction, I completely agree with this. As a 2022 prediction, I don't know if this is going to be the year that really makes this something that everyone is thinking about. On the tail end of that, I'm going to completely flip. Prediction 2, flooding and coastal erosion at a rate we have not previously experienced. I completely agree with that. We've seen more erratic weather and weather systems the last few years. We've seen flooding and erosion that I've never seen in my lifetime. I do expect that to accelerate.
I agree with you, James. the erosion and the flooding, it's happening everywhere and it's ongoing and it's only increasing. So 2022, it's going to happen. I don't know where, but it is going to continue. Plain and simple. It's not going to stop.
Prediction 3 is an area I know nothing about, so I'll throw it to you. Inflation and higher interest rates will slow the global economic recovery.
Well, I'm not an economist at all. In fact, I didn't do very well in economics, so I'm not going to. I don't have a lot of comments to say here, but I do think with the way things are going, food prices are going up, and we've already talked how difficult it is for people to even try and get rapid testing. And mentioned that people are losing their jobs as well, or can't find jobs, or can't. There's issues around that, and I think all of that's just combining with the interest rates and inflation now, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I think the way it's going to get better is if we get a handle on vaccines and COVID, then some of the other trickle down effects will hopefully get better, and I think this is one of them.
Exactly. I agree with you. And so I'm gonna jump around now based on what you said about the vaccine. So prediction 9, vaccination take up on a global basis will be slower than needed. Agree or disagree?
I'm going to agree, because I already heard on the radio the other day that some people now they're shopping for their vaccine. They may have made an appointment and maybe unaware of what the vaccine is that they'd be getting, what shot, whether it be Pfizer, Moderna, etc. But they get there and they say, no, I wanted the Moderna shot while you're offering Johnson & Johnson, or whatever the case may be. So that's making the news. So people are talking about that. So that means that I think people are slowing down, because now they're starting to get picky about it. Why? I don't know, because there is the message that you can mix vaccines, that it's okay, it's not detrimental to do that, but some people just want to either stick with a particular one, or if they feel the one they got initially didn't do the trick, they want something better, and now they're shopping around. So I do think there is going to be a bit of a slowdown.
I also agree. And I think this is something, especially when I work with people outside of North America, where we here don't fully understand that, in the United States, I had an option of 3 different vaccines. And in a lot of countries, when I speak to people, there is one option. And if you just stack rank the effectiveness of some of these vaccines, they're towards the lower end. And to your point, people are saying, well, how come I don't have access to the ones that are more successful? And again, we've talked a lot this year and last about logistics. You live in certain parts of the world, it's logistically easier to get access to all kinds of things. And yeah, I also agree that I think the vaccination rate will be slower than initially predicted for a lot of reasons.
I do want to add a caveat to that. With the new variant that's been established, or identified, I should say, in France, IHU, or I forgot the exact acronym. If that takes off and proves to be stronger than the Delta variant and the original COVID, then there may be a change and we'll go the other direction. I think if there's a really strong, I'll use the word killer virus, then I think there's going to be a mad dash for people, because all of a sudden it's going to become real again.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. If there's a more potent variant, it would certainly change a lot of people's minds. I found, again, skipping around just to make you tear your hair out, prediction 8, I don't even think is a prediction. I think it's already happened. Material and labor shortages spread from the automotive sector to other sectors. People have had to listen to me talk about my dishwasher and our
Yeah, I remember.
and my sister is still waiting on her windows. You guys have all heard these stories. I don't think this is a prediction. To me, this has already happened.
Yeah,
Agree or disagree?
completely. It's been happening for months and months. We were talking about supply chain issues a year ago.
Yes.
And that just led, and the shutdowns and lockdowns and capacity limits on theaters and concert halls, et cetera, and all the impacts that's had. This has been going on for the last year, and we're still in the middle of it, so it's going to continue on. I don't think it's a prediction. The prediction is hopefully by the end of the year, this won't be a problem. But
that would be a prediction. This DRI, I love you. I'm a member. I'm accredited, everything. I go to the conferences, hopefully in a month. This prediction is not a prediction. So it's a fact. So going back in order, it's interesting, Alex, some of these predictions are broad and people find some of these are highly specific. So prediction 4, nationalism and ethnic conflict will intensify. Agree or disagree?
Well, I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with it. I think I'm a little bit on the fence because history has proven when economies are impacted and things don't seem to be, all bunnies and rainbows, then what tends to happen is governments or people that think and live on the fringe try to find somebody to blame for everything. And that's what happened with the Holocaust, World War II. That's what happened in Rwanda. That's how, that's how World War II in general started. Separate that from the Holocaust. But that's how that happened too, is trying to find blame as to how the government, how the economy, how the global situation got into the situation it is. So people look for blame. So I think with this continuing COVID impact and supply chain impacts and shortages of employees, people are trying to find someone or something to blame now. So, and what tends to happen is they rally around a central figure or a central point, and they call it, and we see it in the news, especially in the US, patriotism. And yet, if you look up the definition of patriotism, that's, going after people. That's not what patriotism means. So I do see an increase. I'm not suggesting that there's going to be some huge, massacre or anything like this happening, but I do feel that people will start trying to tear down the globalization, and the dependencies countries have between each other. We're dependent on US for, I don't know. I'll just say lumber, even though I know it's not lumber. It's the other way.
Vaccine.
Vaccine. Yeah, we're dependent on vaccine because we're still building our factory. So we're dependent on vaccines. Well, and we turn around and we start becoming even more pro-Canadian because we're blaming the US. We're in the position we're in because of the US is manufacturing the vaccine, that type of thing. When no, we could have built this factory years and years ago.
Yeah.
But we didn't do it. It's our fault. But that's not the way people see it. People will see it as though it's someone else's fault. So I think on some degree around the world, this will happen. I don't know where, and I don't know how it will manifest itself, but we are seeing some signs of it, around the world already. So.
Yeah, certainly in history has shown in tough times, patriotism becomes nationalism, and you see the rise of the strong man. And I really think going into year 3, if we go into year 3 of a global pandemic, we haven't had anything at a global scale for 3 years since World War II. I think most of us, there were many generations of us who were not around for that. And you see, this is why we've talked a lot about, you and I, about mental health and the great resignation and upheaval in in the workforce. People are getting just tired and upset, and I think it's going to continue. So I agree with Alex. I agree with you that patriotism becoming nationalism in a lot of countries will continue. This prediction.
Somebody will step in to address people's fear, and that's
Correct.
what triggers it. People have fear. Somebody latches on to that, and
Yep.
they'll stay and do whatever they can to make people feel better. And sometimes that means
Blaming someone else.
bad things.
So I will take care of your fear, and your fear is because of this third party.
Yep.
Absolutely. This next prediction I really struggled with. I went back and forth, so I'd like to hear your take. Prediction 5, electric grids and oil gas pipelines will be attacked by hostile states. Your thoughts?
Well, it's already happened. We've already had that occur. A couple of oil refineries, was it Georgia area?
Yep.
Last
In the
year?
United States. Yeah.
Where that exact thing happened. And there were oil shortages. We were feeling it up here because the trickle on effect. And so I don't think it's a prediction. I think it's actually something that's already occurred. Now, it may happen more often. I hope not, but it may happen more often. But it has already happened, and we've already gone through that. And there have been attacks. They've ransomware or some sort of a cyber attack on some of these facilities, and organizations have made the news already. In some cases, they've been able to weather the storm and keep the nefarious players at bay. But we are already experiencing this.
Yeah, and this is why I struggle with this one, because of the wording that they'll be attacked by hostile states. So I took that to mean nation states. And what I thought was interesting with the oil pipeline that you mentioned, those were certainly, it appears to be people who were in the Russian sphere of influence, but were not acting on behalf of the state or the government, because all of their Bitcoin wallets and stuff got wiped out after the fact. And the reason I struggle with this is because a hostile state to attack another country's grid, you got to be careful, because at some point you're going to poke the bear and then it'll become a military issue.
Yes.
And I was wondering, do I expect this to happen from individuals and consortiums? Yes. Do I think a government will keep doing this to a bigger country that can retaliate? I hope not, because the retaliation will first be cyber and then will be military. There's not a major country out there that you can threaten their electric grid or their oil pipelines, and that they're not going to the UN asking for a resolution. So yeah. I kind of struggle with that one.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
So prediction 6, another one of those oddly specific. An international news organization is hacked, resulting in a large amount of compromised personal data being made public. So it reminds me of the Sony hack a few years ago. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, I kind of struggled when I read this one too. News organization. Going, why a news organization specifically? Unless it's something that related specifically to, and this was my thinking, the January 6th insurrection in Washington. There was some sort of a hack going after Fox News or ABC News or whoever. And I thought, well, that's the only way I could think of. You would hack a news agency, because you're not going to get any money out of it, really. You're only going to get money if you attach the big corporations who have billions in the bank, which to me would be more of the target for a lot of these places, even though they go after all sizes anyway. But when I read this specifically news agency, I was like, I'm not so sure it would be a news agency. There will be other organizations that will be targeted, agreed, but a news agency, I'm not so sure. And then, like I said, I could only think of it from the way of trying to expose somebody or a news story, and that's And maybe that's what this means. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Your traditional ransomware actor is looking to get paid. They're not looking to leak. They want to get paid.
Yeah.
I agree with you. If this happens, it'll be politically motivated, like the Sony attack, and nothing to do with ransomware.
Right.
So again, we're going to save prediction 7 for our next segment, but quickly looking at prediction 10, again, I don't feel this is a prediction. This is happening. Prediction 10, there will be strong resistance to returning to the conventional office working model.
Completely.
To me, this is happening. You and I have talked about this for 6 months.
Yeah.
This is, business has fundamentally changed and organizations need to change with it, or they're going to suffer even more so in 22 than they did in 21.
Yeah, this is already happening. It's not a prediction. It's been going on for months. We both know people that don't want to go back to the office, and we both know people who probably would prefer to be in the office. But it's happening already, and organizations are already talking about offloading some of their facilities or floor space. Yep. They're in a tower. Half of my people are going to work from home, or we have a hybrid situation. I don't need 10 floors in this tower anymore. I only need 4. So this is already happening. And we've already seen, or at least I have, news reports where people have been forced back to the office, because the CEO of a major bank, I think it was Sachs. It was Goldman Sachs, maybe. I forget who it was. But a bank CEO saying, I expect everyone back in the office, and the pushback he got back, and that was a year ago.
Yeah.
So, a year later, that same resistance is still going to be there, and it still is, and people still are. I don't want to go back to an office full time.
Agreed.
After 2 years of being home, no, I'm not going back to the office anymore. So for all future clients, guess what?
Alex needs to be remote.
Yeah, part of the time. Part of the time. On that note, we have come to the end of our second segment. We have one more of these predictions to go, and it actually leads into our next topic. So we'll be right back. We're talking with James Green this week in business continuity. Welcome back. We are talking with James Green this week in business continuity. Our 10th episode, by the way, James. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. This is our 10th one.
Very nice.
So now we were going through the DRI's predictions for 2022, and there's one still left to talk about. What's that last one?
Absolutely. So this prediction got me thinking about something bigger. So I want to get your take on that. So prediction number 7, an extended outage of a global IT platform impacts international e-commerce, stock market trades, and welfare services. And to take a step back on this one, Alex, this has been something I've been thinking about a lot lately, the last couple of months. We are so focused these days on COVID as risk managers, as we should be, and we're so focused on cybersecurity as we should be. Have we forgotten about disaster recovery? I don't see a lot of articles these days about DR. We've got a study about, technology legacy debts and some things we can dig into, but it feels like the chatter and the urgency on DR has gone down. So my question to you, along with this prediction, have people forgotten about DR?
It's interesting because when you sent the email, I responded back saying that very topic I thought about for the weekend, which, just the once, but I thought it odd that you had also been thinking the same thing. I think part of it relates back to the argument of business continuity, technology recovery. Is it being taken over by security? And so everybody, as you said, everyone is focusing on cyber. Not that they shouldn't be. They're focusing on cyber. So they're not looking at technology recovery anymore. And I think part of that is due to we're in a global pandemic, everybody's involved, we're, quote, all in it together, experiencing impacts. But my IT was working fine. I just had to upscale some things, so people could work from home, buy some more bandwidth and laptops, etc. My facility was still there. I'm in a major disaster. I had 2 data centers that back each other up. I never have to use them. So I've got all this cost that's collecting dust, and spiders are, crawling through the whole place. So I think people are looking at IT DRP or technology recovery, whatever you want to call it, and saying, what, that's not my concern right now. My concern is cyber. We can't let anybody in. Don't let anybody in. Stop. Everybody at the door. And I think they're forgetting that sometimes, there are normal wear and tear on servers. There's normal business user issues that can create problems for your DR environment. And if you don't continue to focus on it, you're going to experience one of these things and find out that your plans and your systems and your change management weren't kept up to speed. So now nobody knows where things are. And I think that's part of the problem right now. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think what a lot of organizations have done the last few years, instead of grow their risk management and resilience budget, they've just shifted the same dollars. And I found it interesting. So there was a report I sent you. Dimensional Research and ITRS Group published a report, Financial Institutions Forgo Critical IT Spend, a global survey on operational resilience. And there was one stat that jumped out at me. The respondents, in your opinion, are budgets at odds with desired operational resiliency? And 78% of people said yes. And to your point, I think what's happened the last 3 years, we've taken our DR budget, maybe we've taken our life safety budget, our business continuity, we've put it all into cybersecurity and COVID because those are the 2 most pressing issues today. But it doesn't mean all those other risks have gone away permanently. And especially in an IT environment, as you know, when that technology legacy debt, it keeps building and it gets so high to a point you can never overcome it. And I think what will happen next year, there are going to be some outages that maybe should have been smaller than they were. Or another aspect of this study I thought was interesting. Is it becoming harder to maintain service level agreements? 79% said yes. You're just going to see this slow slip until it's a break. And that is something I do think will happen in 22 to a lot of companies who have ignored IT, who have ignored DR since February of 2020. And it's going to be time to pay that price.
Well, let's look at first of all, it's interesting, the 2 stats you just gave, the SLAs and the budget driving decisions, were the same 2 things that I wrote down here too. Kind of scary here.
Oh my goodness.
Something else I wanted to add though, with all these organizations and leadership and professionals focusing on cyber and not so much looking at their business continuity, their technology recovery and things like that, we've been saying for the last couple of years that these hackers, professional hackers and organizations are getting better and better at what they're doing. We're always behind the 8 ball responding to what they're doing.
Yes.
Now they've got us focusing in this direction. Are we opening up a door for them to come in a different way now with our IT disaster recovery and business continuity not receiving the attention it needs, or should receive? They let's face it, these people are smart. They're highly intelligent people that are doing this. If they know they've got all organizations running and scrambling for cyber, well, great. They're all trying to fix the front door. I'm going to go through a back door or the side door, or the side window. So I couldn't help but think, not that they're pushing all the buttons, but with us scrambling around, it's making some organizations a bigger target in other ways.
Yeah, and I get it. For our colleagues, it's hard, right? Management comes to you with the pressing issue of the day. Everyone's talking about that issue. They want you to mitigate that risk, but you have to keep those other things in, front of mind. If there's 5 people in your family, you can't pay attention to one and ignore the other 4 and expect there to not be consequences.
Yeah.
On the line.
Yeah, you can get your cyber security area all, tickety-boo, just running perfectly. Meanwhile, you've ignored your incident management and your emergency management, your building facility, security stuff. Well, you're just inviting people to come in a different way. It's like, haha, while you were looking that way, I got to do this behind your back. And I'm sure, I wouldn't doubt that something like that hasn't already happened somewhere.
Great.
There's just no way, with all the thousands and thousands of incidents that are occurring that tend to go unreported. There's no way that every incident is cyber related. I think some of these have they found backdoors in different ways and to still get what they want. They're, like I said, they're smart people. They're going to find new ways. So, James, we've come to the end of our show.
We ended at a low note, I guess. High note, low note. Sure.
Well, let's end on a high note. If you're reading anything or focusing on anything,
I am. I'm reading this. Here we go. This book called I started this over the weekend. The Yacubian Building. It was translated from Arabic. I guess it was a bestseller in Egypt. It's a fictional account of the life and times of a bunch of people who live and work in a single building. Very interesting. I got this as a Christmas present, and full disclosure, since we're at the hour mark, I don't remember who gave this to me, so my apologies. I'm a horrible person. But hopefully that person's not still watching at this point. But fantastic book. Just started it over the weekend and love it. How about yourself?
I finished a few books. I know we've mentioned quite a few over the months, and they're all done.
Nice.
But I also finished over the last couple of weeks Jonathan Hemus' Crisis Proof.
Okay. How was that?
How to prepare the worst day of your business life. Really good. Lots of interesting information. And I've interviewed him. So keep an eye open for his episode.
Excellent.
Burnout Proof by Michael Levitt. And this is some great information. It's not a big book, but it's a lot of good information. And he uses a lot of his own personal experiences with burnout here as well. So I've also got scheduled an interview with him to be on the show.
Excellent.
As well.
Excellent.
Finished this one, the Burnout Epidemic with Jennifer Moss. I did send a message. Haven't heard anything back. And I finished for entertainment, Age of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, the 6th book. I love fantasy and fantastic books. I recommend it. And right now, go ahead.
No, what do you got right now?
Right now, I'm reading Money, Sex, War, and Karma. Notes for a Buddhist Revolution by David R. Loy. So
nice.
For my own personal growth and it's no secret practicing Buddhist. So every so often I got to get back to those reading and practices and make sure that I'm still on the path I want to be on. So
excellent.
So James, any final thoughts or comments?
I'm supposed to be at a few conferences in the next 4 weeks. We'll know for sure by the time we record our next episode if that's actually happening or if I'm here in my house again. I would say the odds are 50-50 and falling that I will actually be leaving, but we'll see what happens in the next few weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I have my fingers and toes crossed for Louisville. And you and I were talking about seeing if there's some sort of thing we could do while we're there, even a live broadcast. So that would be fun. But who knows right now? Maybe we'll just save it for the fall and do something with DRJ in the fall or something like that. Because I'd love to do the MC thing again. But
yeah, I hope you were fantastic with that. So we'll see what happens this year if we can see people again.
Yeah, it would be nice. Let me tell you, we're in our third calendar year, going through this, and something's got to give, just like the movie title or whatever it is. So it would be nice. James, thanks very much for sharing your expertise and time again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. Always a pleasure.
And until next month, stay prepared, everybody. If you liked that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave a message and let me know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to be a guest on the show to talk about something related to business continuity, disaster management, COVID, personal well-being, anything that's relatable to those subjects, you can reach me through my LinkedIn profile, which is in the video description. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. In the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.